Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start outside today. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to take two budget wildlife photography rigs out and show you what we can do on a limited budget. The first one's going to be under $2,000. The second one will be under $1,000. You'll probably notice some costume changes because I'm going to be out for a couple of different days. It's really windy today. Hopefully that dies down, but I think at least one of the days coming up is also going to be windy. But I spotted a couple of bald eagles at two different sites, so I think we're going to have some interesting stuff to do some photography of, and it should be a really interesting series. So stay tuned. A quick note before we get started, a couple of the pieces of gear that we're going to use today I bought 5 years ago or more when I was in the industry, and probably got a discount on, but brands aren't really important for these kinds of things. You can usually find discounts depending on what you're willing to sacrifice. Things that took great wildlife photos 5 years ago or 10 years ago probably still do acceptable jobs, and that's kind of what we're going to be focused on. So I'll walk you through that and some alternatives from other brands. But I wanted to let you know I did get a discount on some of this gear. I'm out at a lake not too far from where I live, and some geese are making a lot of noise over there, so promising subjects. We're going to be testing. Today I'm going to do original EOS R and a Sigma 150-600. It's the more expensive of the two budget rigs that I'm going to show you. There was an eagle flying around when I was pulling in the parking lot. Don't see it now, but hopefully we get to see it before we leave. And there are quite a few geese out in the lake and a couple other birds, so we'll test and see what this thing can do. All right, he's flying around a little bit, so I'm going to try to catch him in the air. Some of those have to be keepers. He's flying right over the top. I've got it in low speed, continuous, so we get good coverage from the autofocus system and prioritize getting a good shot over just tons and tons of autofocus stuff. I think it's working pretty good. A little bit of a heavy camera, not as bad as some of the fast glass lenses, but don't need it right now. I'm shooting at 1/2000th of a second. I may crank that up even a little bit more. Way out there, see if you can come a little closer. Really excited to show you these pictures. So I moved out to another lake so I can take some more pictures of wildlife, and I'm looking at two different bald eagles. Unfortunately, both of them are pretty backlit, so I'll have to see what I can do. If I got around to the other end of the lake, I think they're just too far away to get a good shot of, so we'll make it work. But they are beautiful, and there's a giant nest here, and we're gonna take some photos, and when I'm back in the studio, we will talk about what we got and how I got them with this rig. I like to take a few shots because I've got it in continuous focus to compensate for their movement, and as they move and the focus system moves, not all of them are going to be tack sharp, so could probably single autofocus since they're not moving very much, but if on the off chance that they take off while I'm taking pictures, I want them to grab that, so usually you have to overshoot just a little bit with continuous autofocus to make sure you get great pictures. I'm shooting at about 1/2000th of a second. It looks like my ISO is about 400 or 500 with the full frame camera. That should be just fine. So I'm going to take a few more here. There's a second one that landed in a tree, so I'm going to stop, reposition this camera, and we'll do a little bit more shooting. So in the upper right corner is the eagle's nest that we're trying to image here. And on the hard left, slightly below that, that little sliver is another eagle. So we're quite a ways away. They are protected, so you cannot approach the nest directly. You have to be, I think it's almost 700 feet away. So this is about as close as we're allowed to be. I'm not sure how much of this is going to come through because it's super windy today. I've got a dead cat on the mic. I may need to overdub this in post. Out at the place I started yesterday, I have a different camera rig today. This is my under $1,000 wildlife setup. See what we can do. This has got a little less resolution, so it may not be as good of a choice for things like the eagles where I have to crop pretty heavily, but there's some other birds around here, and we'll see if the eagles show up. Right now, they're not in the nest. At least I can't see it from here, so we'll see what we get. It's flying over right now. Let's see if I can capture it. I think I got some good shots of it. Still not sure if any of this is going to come through audio-wise because the wind's so high, but the eagle just flew over. I was able to capture a couple of shots. It's in the nest now. Super windy. So he's kind of zipping all over the place, but if he takes off again, we should be able to get a few shots. And I got some shots when it circled around before it landed too. So I believe there's a second one. I'll keep my eye out for it as well. Kind of fun. We're out at the second lake today, shooting the cheaper of the two budget cameras. I got some shots of eagles off camera because it was flying around as I was walking in, so I sat down my bag and didn't have time enough to set up the video camera. You can see one bird up in the nest, but it's hidden behind some branches and might be feeding some young because it's got its head down. But its mate flew off, so hopefully we'll see it here and get some more pictures. But we did get some coming in, so I'll show you those when we get back to the studio. So back in the studio here, and the first camera that we shot on day one is my original EOS-R, or EOS-R, depending on how you want to say it, with a Canon adapter to allow EF mount lenses and a Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary lens that was originally for DSLRs. Looking at online used prices right now, these are selling for well under $2,000, depending on condition, but still there's tons of options there where you can get under the $2,000 mark. And they're even a little cheaper right now locally when I can find them. For wildlife, the things that I like about this setup is that at 30 megapixels, I have a little more flexibility to crop and post and still have good enough resolution for printing. Its focusing system is really good, especially in low-speed continuous. It locks on and really holds on to focus really well. It does a good job of keeping moving subjects in focus, and compared to the other systems we'll look at, I found it a little easier to lift dark shadows in post to help deal with some of the backlighting that I had while I was out. We really can't control where wildlife is, and sometimes we can move to get into better light, but sometimes we can't. And pretty much all weekend, it was at least slightly backlit. The downside to this is it's not light and it's not small. Certainly there are heavier lens camera combos out there, but if you just want to throw a lens in your backpack just in case on a hike you run into wildlife, this is a commitment where the second camera we're going to look at is a little easier to manage. The photos that I shot over the weekend, and here are the ones from the first video earlier, have a good quality and were easy to edit and post, despite accidentally turning down my shutter speed to only 1/800th of a second for some of these. The results at full resolution are printable, and a photo that I shared on social media was really well received. On the second day, I shot the less expensive of the two camera rigs. This is an Olympus EM5 Mark III with a 75 to 300 Olympus lens on it. Believe this is the Mark II of that lens. There's been a couple iterations of it. Yeah, it is the Mark II. As far as magnification goes, this lens on this body looks exactly like the 150 to 600 on the Canon that we looked at previously. It's thanks to the 2x crop factor and the smaller sensor. One of the things that I love about this camera is it's so small. The portability means it is easy to throw in a backpack if I'm not specifically doing wildlife photography. Lots of times I'm going out to hike or do landscape photography, or I'm just going to some place that I've seen wildlife at before, but that's not really why I'm there. This is pretty easy to fit in a backpack and take with you, or into even a shoulder bag. The downside is with the smaller sensor, you don't get as much resolution. It's a little harder when you have to crop. Some wildlife you can, with practice, get pretty close to, but not always. And if you can't get close, lots of times you have to crop, and it can be harder to get a printable image with this. And just comparing it side to side with the Canon we used earlier, I found that my shadow recovery was better when I had to lift things up because of the backlighting with the Canon camera compared to this Olympus. But I've gotten a lot of great pictures off of this camera, particularly on, there's a ton of whitetail deer around here, and usually you can get fairly close. I can get a great headshot with these, and I can print it as big as I want. 20 megapixels with good image quality and good lighting can print pretty darn big. The other benefit is this is easily under $1,000. This lens is really cheap. There are sharper, longer lenses for Olympus. They come with a price tag, though. One of the things I love about Olympus is the smaller lenses and smaller cameras tend to be less expensive than their full-frame counterparts. They've got a lens that with the built-in teleconverter gets out to 1,000 millimeter equivalent, but it costs more than the full-frame lens by a lot than I have over there. So there's a trade. This seemed like a good compromise to me. These photos were a little harder in post. I think they are good enough for social media, but the lower resolution and more challenging shadow recovery would limit these to pretty small prints in actual physical media. Considering how inexpensive the system is, I'm still happy with the results. And for animals that you can get closer to, like I had mentioned earlier, this setup could yield really great results. For the other brands, Sony has been doing mirrorless cameras for a really long time. They have got a great collection of legacy cameras available. And something like the A7 II or A7 III is probably a good place to start if you want to do full frame. There's a lot of third-party glass available there as well. Looking on the big online platforms for selling and buying used equipment, I saw a 150 to 600 Sport that combined with like an A7 Mark II would be well under the $2,000 mark in US money. So there's options there, and I think good ones. And I know people that shoot Sony and have great success with it. And for Nikon, right now, the Z50 Mark II, which is an APS-C body, and I believe it's the Tamron 50 to 400, combined right now, they are right at the $2,000 mark, maybe a few dollars more. And when those become more plentiful on the used market, they should be a really great deal as well. With the crop factor, you're going to get about the field of view that you did with the two cameras that I took out, and that's another solid company. Panasonic was a little late to the game with phase detect autofocus, which I really prefer for wildlife. So I don't know that there's any really great deals there, but some of their modern stuff has wonderful phase detect autofocus and would be great. I think it's just going to go over that $2,000 mark if you're buying new today or used. They're not heavily discounted yet because they're so new. So shooting wildlife on a limited budget can be a challenge, but it's certainly possible. Some of the great cameras of only a few years ago have become pretty affordable as new stuff comes out. And certainly things like animal tracking for birds or dogs or other wildlife is super handy to have. And I'd love to have the budget to buy a five-figure sport lens with a really bright aperture. But for those of us that can't get there, these cameras do a really good job. And certainly renting is always an option if you have a good body and you want a sharper lens. I think I mentioned that Olympus does have some higher end glass, as does Panasonic for Micro Four Thirds. So that's easy. And Canon, especially through their legacy lens mount and an adapter, has tons and tons of long glass available. So if you really want to push what you can do and get to the super high end, there's a way to do it. But on a budget, I think these two cameras do a great job. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We're a new channel and we really appreciate the support. I think this is a 15th video, give or take, and it's going real well and I enjoy doing these for everybody. Thanks for watching and good luck in your art journey.